Imagine for a moment that there is nobody in this world. Nobody to comment on your life. Nobody to laugh at your mistakes. Nobody to call you a failure. Nobody to question your decisions. Nobody to gossip about you. Nobody to judge your actions. Think deeply about this. How would you live your life? Would you move faster? Would you finally start that business? Would you finally leave that toxic environment? Would you finally post your ideas online? Would you finally become who you truly want to become? Most people would, and that reveals something terrifying. Most people are not truly afraid of failure. They are afraid of people watching them fail. That is the real fear, not poverty, not mistakes, not starting over. People. What people will say, what people will think, how people will look at them. That is why many people remain average forever. Not because they are empty, not because they are unintelligent, not because they lack potential, but sincerely speaking, deep down, most people already know they are capable of more. They know there is something bigger inside them. They know they are supposed to do more with their lives. They know they have ideas, visions, dreams, abilities that could completely change their future. But the real fear is, what will people say if it fails? What will people think if this doesn't work out? What if I look stupid? What if people laugh at me? What if I disappoint everybody? What if they use my failure against me? That is the real prison. And because of that fear, many people would rather stay in a situation that slowly destroys them than take a risk that might temporarily embarrass them. They choose silent suffering over visible failure. They choose comfortable limitation over uncertain greatness. And this is why so many people live below their true potential, not because opportunity never came, but because public opinion became more important than personal destiny. And the painful part is, most of the people they are afraid of disappointing are people who are also afraid to chase their own dreams. Society tells people to be yourself, but rewards conformity. The moment you truly become different, the moment you start thinking independently, the moment you stop following normal patterns, people become uncomfortable because human beings claim to admire freedom, but psychologically, they are addicted to familiarity. That is why people criticize things before they understand them. That is why people laugh at visions before they become successful. That is why most great people were first misunderstood before they were respected. Because average minds interpret reality through exposure. If they have never seen something before, they automatically doubt it. If something goes beyond their experience, they call it unrealistic. And this is dangerous, because if you are not careful, you will reduce your entire life to fit inside the mental comfort zone of people who have never done anything extraordinary. Think about that. Many people today are living according to opinions formed by people they cannot even guarantee are right. People operating from fear, people operating from limitation, people operating from small thinking. And yet, those are the same people many individuals are trying desperately to impress. That is why constantly explaining yourself destroys power. Because the moment you constantly need people to approve your decisions, you unconsciously place them above your own mind. Now, your confidence depends on reactions. Now your peace depends on approval. Now your identity depends on acceptance. And slowly, you stop living naturally. Everything becomes performance. You start talking carefully, moving carefully, dreaming carefully, thinking carefully. Not because you are wise, but because you are afraid of judgment. There's a difference. Wise people think deeply. Fearful people think socially. Wise people move from conviction. Fearful people move from approval. Wise people can survive misunderstanding. Fearful people panic when misunderstood. And this is why so many people are emotionally exhausted today. Because pretending is exhausting. Performing is exhausting. Constantly monitoring yourself is exhausting. Trying to sound acceptable to everybody is exhausting. And most people do not even realize they are doing it. They think they are simply being realistic. But sometimes realism is just fear with intelligent language. That is a dangerous truth many people avoid, because fear sounds more respectable when it disguises itself as logic. That is why many people secretly kill their own potential while calling it maturity. But history has never been shaped by people obsessed with sounding reasonable. The greatest inventions in human history were not reasonable when they first appeared. At the time they appeared, they sounded crazy. When people wanted to fly, it sounded insane. When people imagined talking across continents instantly, it sounded impossible. When people believed they could change the world, society laughed first. Because greatness almost always looks unreasonable in the beginning. That is why trying too hard to sound reasonable to everybody is one of the fastest ways to kill greatness, especially when the people you are trying to sound reasonable to are comfortable being small. Because small-minded people mistake limitation for wisdom. They think fear is intelligence. They think safety is maturity. They think conformity is wisdom. But throughout history, the people who changed the world were usually people willing to be misunderstood temporarily. This is why Friedrich Nietzsche said, "And those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music." That quote explains human psychology perfectly. People judge what they cannot internally perceive. If they cannot see your vision, they criticize it. If they cannot understand your mindset, they attack it. If they cannot imagine your future, they try to reduce it to their level of understanding. And this is why you must become careful whose opinions you internalize. Because everybody operates from their level of exposure and experience. A fearful person gives fearful advice. A limited person gives limited interpretations. A small-minded person unconsciously tries to make everything smaller. That is why one person sees opportunity, while another sees danger in the exact same situation. One person sees possibility, another sees risk. One person sees growth, another sees embarrassment. Reality is interpreted psychologically, and if you build your life entirely around people's opinions, you may unconsciously inherit limitations that were never yours. This is why constantly explaining yourself becomes dangerous psychologically. Because over-explaining trains your mind to seek permission before action. Slowly, your confidence stops coming from self-trust. Now it comes from approval. If people support you, you feel secure. If people doubt you, you begin doubting yourself. And this creates internal weakness, because your mind becomes externally controlled. That is why Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Deep quote. Because growth often requires temporary misunderstanding. Transformation often looks strange before it looks impressive. And people who are addicted to approval can never fully evolve, because evolution requires becoming unfamiliar. Most people are not living from conviction. They are living from adaptation. There's a difference. Conviction asks, what feels true? Adaptation asks, what will people accept? Conviction follows alignment. Adaptation follows approval. And this is why many people unconsciously betray themselves every day. They silence opinions they truly believe. They abandon dreams they secretly want. They tolerate environments destroying them internally. They shrink their personality to avoid criticism. Why? Because social belonging feels safer than authenticity. But every time you abandon yourself for acceptance, your self-respect weakens. Every time you ignore your intuition to satisfy people, your inner voice becomes quieter. Every time you explain yourself endlessly to people committed to misunderstanding you, you unconsciously lower your own authority. And eventually, you become psychologically divided. One version of you wants freedom. Another version fears judgment. One version wants expansion. Another version wants approval. And this inner conflict creates exhaustion, because the soul becomes tired when it cannot live honestly. Have you ever noticed something? The most powerful people are usually not the loudest people. They simply move differently, calmly, clearly, directly. They do not spend their lives emotionally negotiating their existence. They do not constantly explain every decision. They do not panic when misunderstood, because they understand something deeply. Not everybody deserves access to your inner world. Some people ask questions to understand you. Others ask questions to control you. Some seek clarity. Others seek leverage. And emotionally intelligent people learn the difference. That is why silence becomes powerful. Not weak, powerful, because silence removes desperation, silence removes performance, silence removes the need to constantly convince. And the moment you no longer feel pressured to explain yourself endlessly, your energy changes. Your confidence becomes quieter, but stronger. This is why Laozi said, "Care about what other people think and you will always be their prisoner." Simple quote, but terrifyingly true. The moment your identity depends on public approval, you are no longer free. Because now people control your emotions without touching you. They control your decisions without forcing you. They control your confidence without even realizing it. And most people live like this their entire lives, psychologically imprisoned by perception. That is why one of the rarest forms of power today is internal authority. The ability to trust your own perception without constant external confirmation. The ability to move without applause. The ability to remain calm while misunderstood. The ability to disappoint people without abandoning yourself. That is freedom, not financial freedom, psychological freedom. And very few people ever experience it, because most people are emotionally dependent on approval. They need reassurance constantly. They need agreement constantly. They need validation constantly. But internally powerful people understand something different. You do not need everybody to understand your path for your path to be valid. You do not need universal approval to pursue uncommon vision. You do not need permission to evolve. And the moment you deeply understand that, you stop explaining every boundary. You stop defending every decision. You stop shrinking your mind to protect small-minded people from discomfort. The moment you stop over-explaining yourself, you begin reclaiming your energy. Your mind becomes quieter. Your emotions become more stable. Your decisions become clearer. Because now you are no longer living through the eyes of everybody around you. You are finally living through alignment. And alignment creates peace, not comfort. Peace. There's a difference. Comfort keeps people stagnant. Peace keeps people grounded. Comfort avoids growth. Peace survives growth. Comfort seeks safety. Peace seeks truth. And truth will often separate you from the crowd. But that separation is necessary, because you cannot become extraordinary while psychologically addicted to ordinary approval. So let people misunderstand you temporarily. Let them question your choices. Let them doubt your transformation. Because history has always misunderstood people before honoring them. And the people who become powerful in life are usually the people who stopped asking the crowd for permission first. The moment you stop needing validation from everybody, you stop living like a prisoner. And the moment you stop explaining yourself endlessly, you finally begin becoming yourself.